I didn't hear it. I can't hear it. I didn't hear any music.
Nope. Thursday night matchups. What is up? We got another stinker of a Thursday night game to be breaking down here for No House Advantage. It doesn't matter, right? You take some props, you have something to root for in the game. It's the Rams, it is the Raiders, the defending champs. Have not quite looked that way this year. We don't know who they're starting at quarterback. It might be Baker Mayfield tonight, and then the Raiders have been relatively disappointing, still kind of alive and in the mix, but on the periphery, certainly. Pete McCarthy, Geoff Ulrich with you. Geoff, how we doing today? We looking forward to Rams Raiders. What excites you about this game?
This is one of those ones where it's not going to be like an exciting game. I don't think it's going to be high scoring. I think it could be closer than people think. And I'm weirdly excited just for some of the players. And it's not that I think that all this stuff is going to work out, but we got guys like Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell. I don't even think we can play Tutu Atwell on No House, but he's in the game. You get my point. Skoranek, all these kind of scrub receivers. I think a couple of them may be okay. And you can target them in props, stuff like that. So I'm getting myself up for it. And
we still get to problem solve it, right? I mean, that's part of the fun, figuring out the puzzle.
I mean, it could be an abject disaster. Like Baker Mayfield may know like 5 plays. So this could just go south so quickly and be the worst game of the year. But I do think the Rams are still a well-coached team. They were competitive against Seattle last week and looked like the Raiders defense is pretty bad. They're banged up as well. So I think it'll be close, but again, I'm also just preparing myself for disappointment. So
yeah, well, both defenses are pretty bad, which is maybe how this ends up being an entertaining game. We'll see. Like and subscribe. Keep up with all of our shows, our DFS offers, our giveaways. Once you do subscribe, hit that notification button. That's going to give you alerts when our shows go live. We've got more No House Advantage content coming your way after this show. Looking at it from the NBA point of view, you got the NFL showdown before lock coming up later tonight. We'll tell you more about all that a little bit later. And don't forget, we're available via podcast as well. So check us out on your favorite platform. This is what we're looking at. No House Advantage. If you want to play the pick'em contest, $15 entry, $10,000 to first place, $5 entry, $1,000 to first place. Hey, last Thursday night, that Patriots Bills game, I did the $5 and go all the way for the $15. Tied for first place. I think I hit for like $40. You want to take all the unders and you want to, play the chalk. You're not going to hit that $1,000 number. I can tell you that firsthand.
It's obviously the right call. I mean, you tied for first. It was right to take the unders, but yeah, you do need to just try and differentiate a little bit, right? So it's tough. I mean, that game was definitely an underfest in terms of the props. I know when I was watching it, I was like, I think there was like one dude who we talked about who hit us over, but that was the way to go. So I'm not shocked to hear that's how that one worked out. And, this week's a little bit different because some of the props are so low.
Yes.
I'm hoping we get a little bit more variance there, but it could also just be very similar. So
yeah, as the basics in this game, the Raiders are a 6.5-point favorite, over under 42.5, pretty basic. The thing that jumped out at me, I guess that I didn't realize, is just how bad the defenses have been here. The Rams are 18th in defense, looking at Football Outsiders DVOA, which doesn't sound that bad, but this was an elite defense a year ago. And they don't have Aaron Donald, right? A lot of that number, that 18th ranking, is because Aaron Donald was there for all but last week. He is out once again. The Raiders are the 31st ranked defense in the league by Football Outsiders DVOA. Neither offense has been good. The Rams, we know, has been terrible. I guess start out basic. Let's start with this Rams offense, because this is where most of the wackiness is going to come in. What's your feel at quarterback? So the latest that John Wolford's going to warm up. They're going to see how his neck feels. If he can't go, Baker Mayfield's going to step in and start. He's risen above Bryce Perkins on the depth chart, which is not shocking because against the Chiefs, the Rams waited as long as possible before letting Perkins throw a pass or anything more than 10 yards downfield. What do we make of this Rams quarterback situation? Because he got some interesting props for Wolford, I think, if he does play.
He's pretty banged up too, man. Like, I mean, again, he got hit like 10 times last game, sacked like 4 times. It was rough. I think that if Wolford starts, I mean, you take the over on the interceptions, like you have to, I think. And again, like it's not the worst matchup, but like Wolford has not looked comfortable. He's working with limited offensive weapons. This isn't like when he came in, I think it was last year, and played a game. No, it was the year before, where they had like more, they had all their team. They had like Cup, they still had like legitimate wide receivers and offensive linemen. And now all that's gone. This is like John Wolford working behind a D- team. That's not good. So you take the under or the over on the interceptions, and then, the passing yardage. I mean, like my concern is he's probably not going to play the whole game. Like, I think that's how banged up he is. Even if he starts, like there's a scenario where he gets sacked a couple times, comes limping off, and then it's Baker Mayfield in the second half. So I think you can probably safely fade that as well. We do have that projected as an over. But there's a lot of risk there, man. Like, I just don't know if this guy's going to play the whole game now that Baker Mayfield's out there. And obviously McVay has at least enough confidence to consider Baker Mayfield to be a starter at any point in this game.
Well, what about the touchdown number? I thought this one would be popular because it's just half a touchdown on.
I didn't even
Wolford.
see the passing touchdown. Was there?
Yeah,
one?
you wouldn't think of it, but it's only at 0.5. So we have this as a heavy play as well. I agree with you with the interceptions. That's my play. But I think the passing touchdown will be very popular over for Wolford as well because of how bad this Raiders defense is. Yeah,
and again, I think that the game plan here for the Rams is going to be protect their quarterback by not throwing the ball. So, you're going to get handoffs to wide receivers in the red zone. You're going to get little dump offs, like potentially laterals and stuff like that. There's no guarantee like Wolford even throws more than 3 passes in the red zone. I mean, they have to get into the red zone too, right? So I'm with you. I didn't even see it because it was so high up. I just was like looking below. But this one's as an over as well. So wasn't expecting to see that on Wolford, but again, they're giving us the 0.5 prop. Again, making things interesting on no house advantage. I think it's a good one. I'm not sure what the rules are on no house with a backup. If he doesn't start, or if he doesn't play in the game, you'll get 0, right? Like you won't get credit.
I don't know if they have to play in a play. I don't want to say anything that's going to get anybody in trouble, because the least thing you want to do is, take the under being all cute. So I'm not going to say what I think it is, but because I don't know for sure, I'll try to look it up. I know I've tried to look this up in the past. I know if a guy's inactive. So let's say Wolford is inactive. Then if you take the under, you get 0 points. You're not getting credit for that. And now if a player is active, I think that's more of a gray area. I've looked around on the site for it before. I can't remember seeing anything that was,
let's be safe. Let's be safe and say if Wolford doesn't start.
Anyway, that won't be the scenario, because if Wolford is active, he's going to start. If he is inactive, I think they'll have Mayfield and Perkins. Mayfield will start. If Wolford can't go, Wolford will be inactive. Perkins will be the backup. So this won't be an issue. If Wolford is active, he's going to start.
It's a perfect point. If Wolford, this should sort itself out. If there's some weird scenario where he is active or something like that, like as an emergency, just don't play him. Or I don't know, email support. But I think Pete's right. If he starts or if he's active, he's going to start anyway. So this should take care of itself. I like the under touchdown call. I think it's going to be very popular if he starts. I think there's a lot of scenarios where he just doesn't hit it. So let's leave it at that.
Well, what about the passing game for the Rams? So we got Ben Skoranek, Van Jefferson, Tyler Higbee. These are the 3 receivers that Wolford or Mayfield could be passing to. I mean, the thing is, if Mayfield plays, you're going to have to take a stand somewhere on this Rams passing game, because there's just not enough players in the pool here. You have to have 7 different players as part of your selections for over-unders. Ben Skoranek is questionable in this game too. He has not reached his reception yard receiving yardage prop or his receptions prop in 6 games. 30.5 receiving yards, 2.5 receptions. Van Jefferson hasn't really been there either. 41.5 receiving yards, 3.5 receptions. Tyler Higbee is great with Matthew Stafford. He disappears with anybody else. I mean, where do you want to go with all this?
Yeah. So I have some interest in Van Jefferson in this game, but again, it's kind of tied to the quarterback, right? Like, I think I need Wolford in here to feel really comfortable about this. I think if Baker Mayfield comes in, you'd probably be better looking at Skoranek or Brandon Powell. Brandon Powell obviously not available on No House Advantage, but Powell is that slot guy who's probably going to play a little bit more if Skoranek doesn't play. And we just seen Baker Mayfield. He's just such a poor downfield passer. Like when it comes to like taking shots, he's inaccurate. You know, he basically drove Odell Beckham out of Cleveland. So it would worry me about Van Jefferson, but Jefferson, you know, hit with a couple plays with John Wolford. He's played with Wolford before. They have, you know, the backup scenario a little bit coming into camp last year as a rookie. And Jefferson's just a pretty good player, to be honest. So, you know, again, he's gone over 35 yards in 2 of his last 3 games. He's caught three passes in 3 of his last 4 games. So I think Jefferson is basically an every snap player. And, you know, if Wolford starts, and maybe even if Mayfield starts, there's a chance he could end up with 50+ yards there. I think it's an okay stance to be contrarian on. I think a lot of people will go under on that too. It's bigger than we're seeing around the sports books. He's around 36.5, 35. So Jefferson going to be a very popular under, but he's playing. He literally played every snap last week, so he's going to be on the field a lot. The Raiders are down. They're injured in the secondary. I think Jefferson is a player you can legit be contrarian on. You should be. Skoranek, I don't mind, but we don't know if he's going to play. And like Brandon Powell popped up last week, and I think he's going to take some snaps there. So Jefferson would be my kind of YOLO play here in the pass game.
Yeah, I think Skoranek, you're pretty safe on the unders. And then, and I don't like saying that with receivers because it just takes one play, but that's what we've seen for a long time now with the trend with the Rams. But Van Jefferson, yes, you can certainly get over. And even the projections bear that out, right? It's 53% chance of under 41.5 receiving yards for Van Jefferson. That's pretty close. It's more of a coin flip. And if you think you can get different, that's part of it. I guess what's interesting too, well, let's do Tyler Higbee as well. Higbee, I mean, look, when Matthew Stafford was there, it was like Higbee and Cooper Kupp were the whole offense, but now without Stafford, Higbee like disappears at times. I think he went the whole game against the Chiefs without a single catch. He has been under 36.5 receiving yards in each of the last 3 games. The last 2, he's been 3 catches or less. And like we've talked about, the Rams, they don't want to be throwing the ball here.
No, it's a great player to talk about. The Rams often change their scheme, and when they change their scheme on offense, it really like affects Tyler Higbee. They go to, I think it's 11 personnel, then Higbee is used more of as a receiver, but without Stafford in there, they're going to bring him in and just block for the run. I almost guarantee that's all he's going to do tonight. And I love his unders in this spot. I think it's a really good underplay. The receiving yards, the receptions, everything. I think you load up on unders. And it was a great point to point out, you know, that like we do have Van Jefferson with the strong prop. And I think that I would much rather go with like a Jefferson or even a Skoranek over. Skoranek, if you can do the over, do the receptions. He's going to be used a lot in the short pass game, I think, regardless of who the quarterback is and if he plays. But so don't touch the yardage with Skoranek. I would go on the receptions. I would look to the over. But then Higbee, like I said, I really expect that's pretty much what happened in the game against the Chiefs. And I expect more of that. They're going to try and run more. They're going to do more trick plays. They're going to keep Higbee in line, and they're going to make him block. They've done it a lot in the past. They moved him around, but that usage, when it dries up, like it just, I don't think you're going to see him much catching the ball. So
yeah, he has disappeared in recent weeks, especially after how big a part he was at the receiving end of things earlier in the season. No House Advantage, if you're not familiar with it, we're talking about the pick'em contests where this is where you can win the big money, right? $10,000 to first place tonight. You often end up seeing that chopped a few ways, but we've certainly seen some unique lineups get to the top. There's a little bit of game theory where you not only want to do what is projected, but you also want to make sure your lineup is a little bit different if you're going to get to the top and take down that big money, especially if you're playing multiple lineups. The projections we're talking about, they're all free. You can follow along. Stokastic.com, go to NFL projections, and then you'll see free NHA projections for No House Advantage. Be sure to check that out. You can also play Against the House. You can do prop selections there, both NBA, NFL tonight. I think there's NHL. There is NHL as well. You put 5 of 5 together, you can hit for 21 times your money. Another way to get in on the action. So be sure to check all that out at No House Advantage. Also, see below, if you're new to No House Advantage, if you sign up using the link below, you're going to you put in $50. They're going to give you a $50 first match deposit bonus. We like free money. That's a way to get yourself in and have a little bit of extra to play with as well. All right, so let's get into the Raiders a little bit. Let me ask you this. So we talked about, and I think we both agree, the Rams, they want to keep the ball on the ground tonight for the most part. If they do fall behind big time, that's where they're passing the ball. So if we're going to take the over on Van Jefferson and some of these other receivers of the passing game for the Rams, are we going all in on Josh Jacobs over on this rushing line, which we have him crushing? I mean, it's just 70.5 rushing yards for Josh Jacobs tonight, who is questionable, but should be, I think he's going to play.
Yeah, no, I definitely think he's going to play too. It is, again, this is why No House Advantage is such a great site to play on. Not only do they create this like unique prop-based, DFS thing, but they give you dynamic lines. Like it's not just the cookie cutter, like what we'd see at the sports book. This is going to drive everyone to one side of it. I mean, everyone looks at this, says 70.5 yards, got to go over, got to take the over. Rams have a pretty good rush defense. I know they're banged up, but they're like top 10 in defensive DVOA against
no Aaron Donald.
What's that?
No Aaron Donald.
No Aaron Donald. I get it, but like they've held up pretty well even despite these injuries. They're competitive last week, so it's a pretty good defensive line he's going up against, and it's a short week. And I'm not saying that, like, again, we're just talking probabilities here, right? Probabilities versus how owned the over is going to be on Josh Jacobs. The over on Josh Jacobs is going to be insanely high. It's going to be the highest owned prop on the slate. I think his probability going under this is actually better than, versus what the kind of split is going to be between the over and the under takers. So it's really interesting. Again, if you're doing like single lineups, do you need to do this? Probably not, unless you're just looking for, you're really just in the mood for some high variance. But I would definitely be mixing in. I would want multiple lineups. If I had 10, 12 lineups, I would want multiple lineups with the under. If this hits, you are in such a good spot. You've taken out like the majority of the field and you're basically playing for first. So it's a really polarizing spot. It's probably going to go over because it's a low total on Josh Jacobs, but man, if you get this, the leverage you gain is so big, and it just correlates well too. You can take the over on Devontae Adams. You can take the over on Derek Carr. Adams is still in a really good spot. This secondary is not good. Jalen Ramsey, he's just not Jalen Ramsey, really, the old Jalen Ramsey. And I think Adams wins out in that spot anyways. So a lot of different things going on here. But yeah, really, really interesting leverage spot there with Jacobs.
Yeah, you do have a banged up running back at the very least. And like we said, he's going to play. He's dealing with quad, calf. I think that he'll see his fair share of carries in this game, certainly. But, we've seen weirder things in these games where running back obviously goes down, doesn't get the expected allotment. And just to, it feels good to be right and to, hit the over on this. But as I talked about right at the top, last week, I think we talked about the Bills and the Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson, and he ended up under his rushing yardage total. If he had gotten over it, it would have twisted things a little bit. But, if you get first place and you get 8 times your entry fee, that's fine. And if you're firing a single bullet, great, good for you. Yeah. But if you're throwing a lot of lineups in there, that's not cutting it. So that's where you do want to get a little different. And the other way to get different with something like Josh Jacobs is just don't play it. Don't have that line on the board. And then you take a little bit of the risk out of it if you could find that 7th prop that is going to come in and be correct. You don't have as much wiggle room with that today because there's just not a lot of players on the board.
Yeah. And it's a great point about, again, if you're playing a couple lineups, just take the over because it is it's our highest projected prop for a reason. We talked about a couple different spots already. I think the Van Jefferson over is going to be a pretty good leverage spot as well. I think you could, we could probably, we didn't talk about Derek Carr, but Derek Carr to throw an interception, I don't think that's going to be highly owned. So there's other low owned spots across the board here that we can kind of talk about. And you can mix them in with Jacobs again. So it's not the one prop that you need to just focus in on, but as someone who just, who's entered in the past and likes to take these shots with these, I mean, it's very tempting to throw in some lineups with Josh Jacobs. I would definitely be doing that tonight if I had if I was multi-entering here.
Yeah, that's how you had the one big night that makes your year. That's what you're kind of hunting for, because you can get up there all by yourself. Let's look at Derek Carr, 260.5 passing yards, projected below that. Not that significantly so. The passing touchdowns, the interceptions are pretty even as far as that goes. I guess Carr's had a disappointing season, but he has ramped it up of late, and he's been a little better firing the ball. Obviously, to Davante Adams, who we'll get to. Is there one that you love for Carr? Nothing really jumps out at me for him.
No, I know it's nothing I really love for Derek Carr. Derek Carr is kind of polarizing for me here. I know his passing total is a little bit it's certainly bigger than we're seeing, around at other sports books, but like we have that projected as a solid under. And I really do think this is the game where the Raiders don't want to draw back here. They want to get the lead. They want to pound Josh Jacobs, and they want to get out of here with a win any which way. They want to make this a short game. It's a short week. So I don't see Derek Carr dropping back, but again, it's the Raiders. It's not like this is a team that can be trusted. There's scenarios where Jacobs comes out, maybe just gets stuffed, gets injured, the Rams score quick, and then all of a sudden, the Raiders need to start throwing the ball. So I think that Derek Carr is definitely capable of going over this in this spot. But and again, it really does kind of flow back to the Jacobs thing. I think that there's scenarios where both Jacobs and Carr go over, but I think there's also a lot of scenarios where Jacobs goes under and Carr goes over. Because in that scenario where I'm speculating that the Raiders are behind, Jacobs isn't doing much early in the game, I mean, that leads to more Derek Carr dropbacks later in the game. So interesting spot for Carr. I think that again, it's going to be a chalky under, probably not as chalky as the Jacobs over, but it's going to be chalky. I just really think that you can right off the bat, you go Jacobs under, Carr over. I mean, wow, that's going to be a really low owned duel right there. So tempting spot. We have it projected as a solid under. I think that if the game plays out, the most likely scenario, the Raiders winning, maybe not big, but just by a decent amount, he just goes under easy. But I think that the Rams are a competitive team with Sean McVay. I think there's enough scenarios to consider the over there. So,
well, I think it's interesting too. So, you usually would like to correlate your quarterback with your receivers. So Carr on our projections is an under for passing yardage, but then Mac Hollins and Davante Adams are both projected as relatively solid overs as far as receiving yardage goes. Davante Adams has been unbelievable of late. He's gone over 78.5 is the line today. He's been over that 4 out of 5 games. The one he missed, he was at 74 yards. So he was right there. The receptions, 6.5. It looks pretty high. We have it as an under, but he's actually had at least 7 catches in each of his last 5 games as well. So he's been super active in this Raiders offense. And maybe it's not unexpected. A receiver on a new team, even though they played together in college, takes a little while for everything to gel. It certainly seems to have now between Carr and Adams. And then Mac Hollins, no Hunter Renfrow, no Darren Waller, projected for over 40 receiving yards for Hollins. And he's been active of late and has been over the receiving yardage and the receptions number in each of the past 3 games. What do you make of the receivers and how to mix them with Carr?
Yeah, no. And I mean, this is kind of another route where, again, if you're going to take that under on Carr and the over on Jacobs and really just kind of be in line with the field, this is, I think Davante Adams is where you can, again, get a little different. I think that a lot of people may just go over on all 3 and just be like, wow, 78.5. I mean, it's just too low. But yeah, I mentioned Jalen Ramsey. He's maybe not like the top cornerback that he is, but he's probably going to give Davante Adams a little bit of a test here. And again, I just think it's really more game flow where I just don't think that the Raiders will want to drop back much. And there's scenarios where when Carr does drop back, maybe he uses Mac Hollins a little bit more, maybe uses, Dawson Knox, uses the running backs, and it's just a little bit more conservative game plan. He doesn't have to attack Jalen Ramsey. I think that's the ideal scenario for the Raiders. So yeah, I think that Davante Adams under actually mixes in with pretty well with a Jacobs and Derek Carr. Jacobs over. I mean, it's not a big yardage total. I get it, but there's other options here for Carr, even though he's been kind of just targeting Davante Adams at will. Some of that heavy targeting though is just completely game flow induced, where overtime games.
Yeah, they've been trying to keep up with the Chargers, the Seahawks. This is not that game.
This is not that game. Exactly. So yeah, I think that's a good way to again, you want to take the chalky picks, which are projecting really strongly. Absolutely fine. This is a good one to differentiate on, because I think, again, the field will still be on the Devontae Adams over.
Austin asked about Foster Moreau. Over under for No House Advantage is 31.5 receiving yards. I like the receptions at 1.5. We have that as a big time over. He's done it in 7 of 9 games. What shocked me about Moreau is he's been so consistent with receiving yardage, and tight ends are a little more consistent than receivers, obviously. But in his last 9 games, Moreau has had between 28 and 44 receiving yards in 9 games. That is that's such a narrow area, and he's been there so consistently. I think it helps you maybe go to the over a little bit, but he is, I mean, that's kind of a weird stat.
The nice thing, though, again, that it's just all speaks to how you should be correlating your lineups. You're taking the under on Adams. It correlates nicely with these other receivers. Matt Collins and Foster Moreau do not have big props. Like, they don't need to do much. So if a couple of those targets just flow over to Hollins or to Foster Moreau, like, these guys will hit pretty easy for us. So I think it's a nice, I think that the Raiders kind of work themselves out a couple different ways. Either you're going super contrarian with Carr and Jacobs, or you're taking the chalk and you're kind of looking to differentiate with the receivers, which, again, I think if Adams goes under, it really helps the over scenarios for Moreau and Matt Collins, and then vice versa. I mean, if you're going over on Carr and Adams, then, maybe you could leave one of those guys out or just avoid them and just, take those guys for your passing game usage.
Good deal to tell you about before we wrap things up. BetMGM, a risk-free bet. You can also get 2 free months of Stokastic plus Platinum. And did I mention that risk-free bet is $1,000? So check that out. You can make a deposit at BetMGM. You got to have your first paid wager. You can check out all the rules, everything you got to check off below. You want to be a member of Stokastic as well. Create a free membership with Stokastic, and then getting yourself 2 months of Stokastic Platinum free is fantastic. It's pretty good timing too, with the NFL season upon us, and obviously playoffs coming up in January. So be sure to check all that out. You can see all of the information below. I think the one thing we didn't touch on was the Rams running game. Kyren Williams kind of disappeared from this running game last week, only had 3 carries. Cam Akers has been much more involved of late. He looked rather live last week, 17 carries, 60 yards against the Seahawks. Williams at 42.5, Akers at 39.5 rushing yards. So, I mean, I don't know how they come up with these numbers, but it makes it pretty clear to go under on Kyren Williams, and then, what to do with Cam Akers. How do you break this down?
Yeah, we didn't touch on it. I mean, I definitely think Akers in a good spot to get, 12 to 15 carries again. This is one I would probably just, eat the chalk on. I don't love Cam Akers as a player, but I think that, again, the Rams will make this competitive in one way or the other. Either it'll just be a little bit closer, or, they may even jump out ahead. And in those scenarios, Akers probably gets there. I have no idea what Kyren Williams is going to do. If McVay comes out and starts giving him a bunch of rushes, it could happen. He tends to be like a one running back guy, though. And it looks like, he's kind of gone back to Akers. So it's such a weird spot for the Rams, player personnel right now. I mean, the receivers are kind of mixing in and out. And now we've got kind of rotating backs week to week, it feels like. But I feel much safer about, just maybe even just leaving Williams out or something, or I don't know. Or maybe leaving Akers out is what I meant to say, because, the Williams could still get carries and go under. If Akers doesn't get carries, he's not going to go over because he's just not efficient and he's not explosive. So I think that the Kyren Williams under makes a lot more sense as a play than necessarily the Akers over. Akers is almost a player I don't mind leaving out completely.
Yeah, if you have the ability to do that. So a couple of tricky selections, as we mentioned, with Derek Carr, with Akers in this spot, but there is certainly some chalk that you can eat. I typically find the running backs are the most projectable, the easiest to figure out, with you don't have too many crazy performances, right? The receivers, there's a lot more variation. So there you go. You can get under on Kyren Williams and then figure out what you're going to do elsewhere. And key decision, Josh Jacobs. Sometimes it looks too easy at 70.5 rushing yards, but this is the game theory aspect of it. You're not playing against a book. You are playing against other people. And if you could be the only one to get something right, you're going to end up in a good spot at the end of the night. So No House Advantage, really bring some extra strategy to the forefront. It does it for NBA as well. We'll have NBA No House Advantage coming up with Terry and Gundacker, and then NFL Showdown live before lock coming your way at 7 Eastern. More coverage of the Raiders and Rams. Tonight, we'll know maybe who's starting a quarterback for the Rams by then, which will help as well. I'm Pete McCarthy. Appreciate you guys joining. Pleasure, Geoff. Thanks, bud.
Thanks.